joining us right now. A PhD research fellow, Thomas A. Roe Institute for Economic Policy Studies, and a senior advisor. He's at the Heritage Foundation, Allyn Mendenhall. Allyn, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it very much.
Hey, I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we got chaos again, man, right? So oil popped back up today. As of early this morning, I didn't get a chance to see it since about 10, 11 o'clock, but it was already up $7, $8. So I'm assuming that we can, if something doesn't drastically change here and we don't get some kind of deal, that the price of gasoline is going to go up, correct?
Yeah, probably so. I mean, today the price at the pump didn't really change, but the price of a barrel of oil is going up. And so, I suspect we're going to go back to where we were when the strait wasn't open, assuming the strait closes. I mean, hopefully we can keep the strait open. We're still at a point where we don't have nearly the amount of traffic that we had beforehand. I mean, we were getting 150, maybe on an incredible day, 200 ships through. Right now, on a good day, we're getting 50 ships through that strait. And when we're talking 20% of the world's oil supply going through that critical choke point, that's a big that's a big deal. So yeah, I think I would not be surprised to see the gas prices go up. And this is just as they were starting to come down too. They had creeped up from February, March, and April, and then May they peaked, and they were just coming back down. So disappointing, but not surprising at the same time.
So everybody, always asks this question, and I ask it of people, and it's always an unsatisfactory answer. And I don't expect you to give me a great I'll come to Jesus moment for everybody listening. But, everyone says that we're supposedly energy independent. And I know, oil is a global market, but why don't we just pump more? Why don't we pump more here and sort of limit the overall negative exposure we have to the world market? Can we do that, or is that just too hard and too difficult to lift?
Well, part of it has to do with regulations, which have been eased in the current administration. And part of it has to do with, if you're a private company and you think that this conflict is just going to be really short, you may not want to spend all the money it takes to start ramping up production if you think the conflict's just going to be short. We've been dipping into our oil reserves quite a bit, but yeah, there's really nothing that stops these companies from pumping more, and they may have to. Look, they may have to. One interesting dynamic is Venezuela has the #1 largest proven oil reserves in the world, but they have all this kind of crude stuff that isn't refined, and we have the ability to refine. So now that we have this new relationship with Venezuela, it'll be interesting to see if we're able to tap into some of that oil. I know both Exxon and Chevron are starting to expand operations down there, so we'll see. There's just so much corruption and stuff like that is inhibiting to the access to oil there. But we'll see.
But is there a way for, let's say, these United States companies, whether it's Exxon or Mobil or whoever, I mean, if they were to produce more, can they decide where they sell it, or does it have to go on a global market?
No, they could. I mean, they could decide where to sell it. Yeah, I mean, okay. I think it's good for our oil companies to export. I mean, we are, we're like the #1 producer of oil, and we have been energy independent since 2019. Where we're really, really good is the liquefied natural gas, though, because we have these shale deposits in like New Mexico and Texas that just don't exist in other places. I mean, you can't just be a country that just says, oh, let's just try to increase our liquefied natural gas, because we're talking about millions and millions of years of sedimentary activity that just can't be replicated. China actually has more extensive shale deposits than we do, but they're in these really arid areas that are tough to get to. It's really hard to frack because the ground's really hard there. So even though they have more extensive shale deposits, it's more difficult for them to get to them. So we're just lucky in that regard that we just have the topography, we have the geography, we have the history and the natural resources to be able to get that liquefied natural gas. And that's a really key thing, because that's where we get our energy. The oil is for the travel and the transportation and jet fuel and putting it in our cars. But that energy stuff is really important, especially now that we're growing in AI, because a lot of that AI is going to depend on that sort that type of energy.
Talk to me about the political ramifications. You mentioned Venezuela, right? So there are some people who truly believe that Trump is playing this 3D game of chess while we're all playing marbles, right? So we're all playing checkers and he's doing the 3D chess. And you get Venezuelan oil, okay? You have pseudo control over that. And if we were ever able to get the Iranian oil, or at least some control over how it's dispersed, we would then essentially have China almost at their knees. Do you think that was part of this plan on the onset? I mean, some people think that's like a 50, 60-year plan that was put in place, prior to, right about the time of the Iranian Revolution. I mean, is that something that you think is a possibility?
I have a hard time imagining that it wasn't at least a factor when you take into account that the number one importer of Venezuelan oil was China, and the number one importer of Iranian oil was China. I find that hard to be a coincidence. Some other kind of geopolitical dynamics that are different now. In light of the Strait of Hormuz closing, you had UAE as of May 1st say, we're out of OPEC. We're tired of these quotas. We want to pump as much oil as we want. And, we've got other OPEC countries that are cheating without consequence. And what do we get out of OPEC now? We're not getting anything out of it. Let's get out, and now we can pump as much oil as we want. And so when the strait becomes fully open, I mean, it's open now, but it is not fully open. Like I said earlier, we're not getting 150 ships through every day. But when we do, and UAE is pumping oil, that's going to be a big game changer. Especially if you have other OPEC countries look at what UAE is doing and say, wait a second,
right? They're
going to do that. Let's do it too.
Well, speaking to that, I mean, a lot of people don't know anything about the petrodollar, and we're talking with Alan Mendenhall from Heritage Foundation. A lot of folks think that maybe, with the Iranians, India, I think, got together, China as well, wanted to flip, if you will, how oil was bought and get it off the United States dollar, if you will. Yeah. So is that part of this equation? How important is it for us to keep that petrodollar?
Well, gosh, yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, I think it's important for sure. Whether that would actually happen, I don't know. Crazier things are happening. There are things that I say, I don't see that being possible. Well, I've said that about like 5 or 6 things that happened over the last 5 or 6 years. So who knows? Right. But, the one thing that we really do need to do is get this situation in Iran figured out, because it is contributing to inflation. I mean, headline inflation is at 4.2%. And the reason you can tell that the oil situation is contributing to that is because if you look at core inflation, it's still below 3%. Headline inflation, as measured by the CPI, includes energy costs and food costs, but core inflation doesn't. So when you remove the energy and food costs, and you see that core inflation is that much lower, you realize, oh yeah, it's definitely, this oil situation is definitely what's given us these inflationary problems. And so, we've got to figure that out, or else we're going to have to deal with that. We get a new CPI report next week, by the way. I'm looking forward to that, to see, at first I was looking forward to see how much better is it going to be now that gas prices have dropped? But now that we've got this new change here in Iran, over the last 24 hours, I might be looking at it to see what hasn't changed, or what may have even gotten worse.
Anybody who does the food shopping in their family knows that inflation is still it's a heavy burden on every household. You go to buy the most basic foods now, and it's you're looking twice, you're looking 3 times. Families are making a decision. I'm making a decision whether or not to put back that box of cereal. I always talk about that. I looked yesterday, as a matter of fact. I was walking through, and they had this special on a box of Cheerios. It was a big box, but it was like $6. I mean, $6 is a special price. That's crazy. I mean, what world am I living in? So yeah, I think hopefully that the gas prices can come down, because as well as everybody, the idea that the midterms are right around the corner, and the last thing we want to do is lose the House and the potentially the Senate, because nobody can afford their regular bills every single month.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And that's the only thing that really the Democrats can latch on to is Iran and this inflation. But it is important keep it in context. I mean, yeah, we've got 4.2%, but it was 9.1% under Biden with gas prices over $5. So we have short-term memories and we forget that. And it's important to bear that in mind just to contextualize things. The other thing is, we've gotten pretty good jobs reports. I mean, this latest one was beneath expectations, but it was still not bad. I mean, our only real bad month was February, where we had some declines. But the other thing is the stock markets are going gangbusters. I guess not everybody has access to capital markets and can invest, but those who do are seeing, records. I mean, the Dow Jones has hit 21 records in 2026 alone, and that's not even counting the records that the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq have hit. I mean, we're seeing rallies that are unbelievable. Obviously, today wasn't a great day for the markets, but it's one day. It's a one-off. So people are seeing those 401ks, as the president continues to remind us, making astronomical gains. And maybe this is a good thing with the Trump accounts to get these young kids invested early on with looking at capital markets, learning how to invest, getting financial literacy. So I see a lot of positives. The gas is the most negative, but again, to contextualize it, it's not nearly what it was under Biden.
So give us a little bit more detail on the latest BLS job report. What is it? What insight can you tell us moving forward from the latest report? I think it came out, yesterday?
Yeah, well, I guess the positive is that we did gain jobs. So it wasn't what we were expecting, but we did gain jobs. Unemployment stays about the same. It shows that the economy is kind of stable. It's resilient. But one interesting thing is where we were gaining jobs. I know earlier in the year, people would say, "Oh yeah, we had a good jobs report, but it was just all healthcare," and as if that were just like a totally bad thing. But this time, we saw gains in the category of professional and business services, and so that's like, you're professionals, engineers, lawyers, accountants, whatever, scientists, and that type of stuff, which is interesting to me. That suggests, I think, a very positive sign that some career-oriented sectors are growing. And I guess, we're also seeing, hiring in some ways, it's wages are still growing, hiring is cooling. I mean, the only positive you may take from that is that it signals that we might have Fed Reserve cutting rates later in the year. I don't know. We've got on the dot plot, we have suggestions that the Fed's going to maintain rates or maybe even raise interest rates. I personally don't like anything that the Federal Reserve does whatsoever. But I wish the thing didn't exist. But if you're trying to take it from the president's perspective, he's been calling for a reduction in interest rates, and if you're on board with that, that would be a positive. I get nervous about the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates to artificial rates, because that's also how you get inflation. If you just put too much circulation into the money supply, too much money in circulation, and you risk stimulating the economy based on artificial numbers, that's always a bad thing. So that stuff makes me nervous. But yeah, I think the jobs report is for the most part, it was below expectations. But is it bad news? No, it's not bad news. It's just news.
All right, we're talking with Allyn Mendenhall. I got one more for you before we run out of time. But this is sort of a 30,000-foot view question. I'm sure you get it all the time. But you mentioned artificial intelligence. So I know with the birth of the internet, jobs were created because of the internet. This feels different to me, right? It feels like artificial intelligence, for how amazing it is, and it's going to be incredibly destructive to jobs that you may farm out to somebody else. Like you don't need graphic designers anymore. You're not going to need anybody to do these tasks that even creative tasks that the middle rung folks would do down the road. You don't need anybody to talk to you about real estate. I mean, the number of jobs that are going to be replaced or eliminated, I mean, it's almost endless. Where do you see that? Do you see a lot of new jobs or equal jobs being birthed from AI, or do you see a massive loss there in the end?
Well, I share the anxiety, but I try to keep a historical perspective in mind and look back over the course of centuries. I mean, we panicked when the printing press came out. We panicked when we had cars. I mean, there are a lot of jobs that we don't have anymore. I mean, there was a huge demand for train conductors at one point, and we don't do train. There was a huge demand for switchboard operators and
horse and buggy drivers, right?
Anymore. So yeah, a lot of things like that. And so I try to bear in mind that there are things that will come out of AI that are just unforeseeable. We don't know what they're going to be. That's the whole notion of Schumpeter's theory of creative destruction, is that, you get some really disruptive technology that comes in and it does eliminate jobs in different sectors, but it creates new jobs that are totally unanticipated. And it's because they're unanticipated that I can't say what they're going to be, So I just have to be hopeful that AI follows the historical pattern of other innovations and other technologies that came about, and that we'll find new things and new forms of jobs. But I do share the anxiety because I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see the future. So I share that anxiety.
Allyn Mendenhall, tell everybody where they can find you and, the pieces that you've written and what you got going on over at the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah, well, thanks. My website is www.allynmendenhall.com. I say that because it rolls off the tongue. I had this one host make fun of me because I throw the www. He's like, you don't have to say that anymore. But it's just my name, allynmendenhall.com. And then, of course, you can always go to the Free Enterprise Initiative at the Heritage Foundation and look at what we're doing there. We're doing a lot of cool corporate engagement where we're filing shareholder proposals with companies that are doing some bad things. So that's fun work.
Outstanding. Listen, I appreciate it. It was great talking to you. Let's do it again real soon, but I thank you, and I'll talk down the road.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, brother. You got it.